So, one thing that I've noticed that I still have not fully explained is the mechanics of these chains. So, I briefly, very agonizingly briefly, covered what I had called the quote unquote black community crisis, which is there's only three industries that they ever try to get into, and then they overcrowd it, and there's too much competition, they don't make it. So, and if they do make it, then they get tokenized, and that just keeps reinforcing the same subconscious image that you're not really supposed to be there. You're The fact that you even are there is the thing that everyone's focused on. They're not focused on what you're actually doing there. They're not focused on what your career is. They're focused on the fact that you're filling the position with your demographic objective body. Your skin is on display. But you have yet to be found because there's too much attention being paid to the skin that we don't ever get beyond that. And that's the problem that I'm talking about, trying to solve, is the problem of inauthenticity. It's the problem of being fake. It's the problem of being misrepresented or of misrepresenting oneself. It's a issue that I have found that pervades pretty much every single aspect of what I'm trying to fight against, which is Charles. And this is what I use to identify those who have been puppeted by Charles, those who are in Charles's pocket or does Charles's bidding. And again, if it applies to you, don't get offended. And if you have, then please try to recognize that that is Charles. That is a manipulation. That is what's keeping you in chains, because nobody ever got free by hating themselves to heaven. Nobody ever got free by killing the right guy. If we are hitting the right mark, why the hell does this keep happening? If we killed all the right people already, why are we still here? So clearly we're missing the target. We're hitting something. We're killing lots of people, but yet this stuff keeps continuing. So killing people doesn't seem to be the answer. Killing and raping and stealing and pillaging and plundering and conquering and dividing and all the things that Charles does are not the things that we do. And they will be the end of Charles if they aren't already, from a causal standpoint, eating at the core of who it is to be Charles. Because think about what it would be like to serve that man or those people. Holy shit. Try imagining who those people even are. It's difficult to even attribute them to be human, let alone to be, someone that you might see on the street that you don't recognize as one of them. Do you? No. But if you think you do, then this message is for you. Don't kill that person. You'll miss the target, and you know it. If that was the right target, we wouldn't be here. We've already been here. We've already done this. We've already had these experiences. It's the same Charles mechanism trying to divide us again. It's Charles. If you feel hate in your heart, I would blame Charles. Charles is essentially Satan to me. Charles is the incarnate of Satan. So this is how I build my story. This is Mike Trevathan's story, okay? And this is why I believe that we're all in chains. It's part of my story. I feel like I'm in chains. So if I'm going to be real and authentic, then I can't speak for any other community. I can't speak for any specific community. I try to understand them because I want to understand what's going on. So I try, but I'm not any other person than myself. I can only represent myself. And that's what I'm getting at, is authenticity is about accurately representing oneself. So I have the power of authenticity to represent myself. I have the power of honesty, which is to best represent the truth. So in that way, I can have, what is that cultural value? I lost it. So there's authenticity and then there's honesty. This one, I have to say, I actually do really well. I'm not very good at authenticity because I am filled with self-loathing. But I'm pretty good at honesty. I'll tell on myself all day long. I have no problem with that. I say it to everybody. If I make a mistake, I will tell you. So and then that brings me to integrity. So those three: authenticity, honesty, and integrity. Those are the things I want my movement to be about, because those are the exact opposites of what the three attributes of Charles or Satan or whatever are to me, which is inauthenticity, which is fakery. It's where I am maybe not even deceptively, but just not representing myself accurately. And this happens a lot when somebody starts sounding like they're karaoke singers instead of like a real professional singer. That's where I see it the most often, and I can hear it in my own voice too. If I'm trying to sound good, it'll sound fake. But if I'm just letting the emotion shine through my voice, then I sound good. But I can't try to sound good or else I'll sound bad. It's missing the mark. It's not quite getting it. You have to be able to focus on the authentic emotion and then let that authentically bleed through your voice. And then you can hear it when you sing. Or I can hear it when I sing anyway. And I struggle with this all the time because I'm always trying to displace myself from myself because I always feel like there's something wrong with me, which is part of what I call Charles, because that's part of the inauthenticity. It's self-loathing and self-hatred is always bad, because if I were bad, God wouldn't have bothered creating me. God doesn't make mistakes. God doesn't create problems. He doesn't create things that have no purpose. He doesn't create things that shouldn't even be there, because if they shouldn't even be there, he wouldn't have put them there. So if they're there, then there must be some reason. So, that's how I justify authenticity. And I don't justify inauthenticity. I don't believe in this culture that does this thing. And it's so pervasive and it's so insidious. It's like, well, you can't talk about religion and you can't talk about politics and you can't talk about anything that upsets anyone. No, that's the exact opposite of what we should be doing. We should be comfortable with ourselves and each other in the community enough that we can trust the other person isn't going to freak out when we say something that's a little spicy. It should be spicy. That's why we talk about these things, is so we can get something substantial to talk about. And anything that's substantial is going to piss somebody off somewhere. Well, that's fine. That's part of the whole drama. That's part of the whole thing. You can't have sun without moon. You can't have light without dark. You can't have good without evil. You can't have laughter without tears. It just doesn't exist. So you have to be able to talk to your friends, your family, your loved ones, your community about the things that you care about at the very goddamn minimum. And you really should ideally be able to talk to anyone about anything without them freaking out and insulting you, disrespecting you, dismissing you, misrepresenting you, lying about you, getting it literally deliberately wrong, which is called intellectual dishonesty, where I go out of my way to deliberately misrepresent what you're saying so that it looks like you're saying something that's racist, or it looks like you're saying something that's sexist, but it actually isn't. And I know it isn't, but I'm going to play that card anyway to make you look bad so that the audience disagrees with you out of a character assassination kind of a bullshit, which is a heuristic. You can't judge the veracity of a claim based upon who said it. Anybody can say anything. Anybody can claim that 2 + 2 = 5, and they're going to be wrong regardless of if it's Einstein who said it or Stephen Hawking. It doesn't matter who says it. If they say 2 + 2 = 5, they're fucking wrong. And it's okay for anybody to point that out. You can disagree with experts all the time. That's how we make progress. If everybody just agreed with Einstein, we would never have figured out quantum mechanics. Or at the very least, we never would have made the advancements that we've made today. I'm not a physicist, so I don't know. But I'm just saying, if we don't progress, then we're going to stagnate. And if we stagnate, we're going to implode. We're going to eat each other alive. We're not going to move forward. We're going to move backwards, because those are the only two things that everything does in nature. It either goes forward or it goes backward, but nothing stands still in nature. Nothing stands still in nature. Everything is in motion. It's either going forward or it's going backward. Or it could be going side to side or something else. Okay, fine. It's not white and black only. Okay, I get that, but I'm just saying it's moving. It's moving somewhere. So if it is oscillating back and forth, back and forth, back and forth in some kind of a red versus blue neutrality of, nominal differences between things rather than oppositional, okay, fine, but it's still not moving forward or backward then. It's stagnant, and nothing in nature stays like that forever. It's going to eventually go from that state to something else. So momentum matters. If we start moving forward, then we'll gain more momentum and it'll be easier to move forward. So by describing and defining these terms, I'm hoping that we can disentangle ourselves from the mess that we've been born in. We don't have to inherit that mess. And then we can clean our lives, clean ourselves, and integrate into our communities rather than it being a bunch of disintegrated, atomized individuals that can't trust anyone around them, which is what is making us all crazy, because that's not natural. It's not natural to be surrounded by strangers. It's a really weird situation. If you think about it, the only time in nature that we were ever in that situation is when we got kidnapped by some other tribe. That's the only other time that you'll ever run into somebody that is surrounded by a bunch of people that they don't know. It doesn't ever happen like that, especially if they're surrounded and they don't even have their own friends next to them. They're just alone in a crowd of strangers. That is a dangerous ass situation, and it's going to put you in a biologically excited state of anxiety. Like, okay, this isn't good. And this happens to all animals that are, social, especially animals like us who are herd animals. We are a part of a herd. We herd. Well, that's what we do. Just like, kind of like wolves, we group into a pack. That's what we do naturally. We are tribal creatures. Because we're human, we're tribal. And it's not good for us to be in situations where we don't know anyone in our area, because we have to know who our tribe is so we can trust them. That's what a community is. It's our tribe. And that is something you can enter and exit. There are people, and this is natural for somebody to be so eccentric that people are like, you know what, we're going to vote you off the island, because if you stick around too much longer, somebody's going to have a fucking problem with you. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but just because you're so fucking weird and you just don't fit in here. So can you pack up and get out of here? And that's natural. There are always going to be people that just don't fit in like that. And then they go off and they go into some other tribe, and hopefully they're accepted. And then that's okay. But we shouldn't kill them, because then if we kill that guy, who's next? Who else are we going to kill? And then those societies that do that, they don't last long. They implode because they go backwards, because they go into a state of not being able to trust each other again. Because then it's all about, well, who's going to kill who next? And that's why we don't kill each other. That's why we have this real fucking difficulty with finishing it. We'll think about it. We'll fantasize it easily. But then actualizing that, actually doing it, actually carrying it out. We have this thing that goes off in our head, this alarm that says, you probably want to think about that. Why? Because those of us that didn't survive. Those of us in the jungle that didn't have that alarm go off, that just felt like it was perfectly fine to go murder your own children or go murder some other tribe's person, they got offed because they had to, because the tribe has to survive. So if you come in between the tribe and its survival, they're going to end yours. So that's how that works. And so it just puts us in that state all the time when we're surrounded by a bunch of strangers. It's not natural. The only time that happens is if we got kidnapped. And if we got kidnapped, then we're slaves. And the only thing that's keeping us alive in that is conformity. And so here we are. We're all surrounded by a whole bunch of strangers, and we're all conforming. So that happens because when we used to live in the jungle, when we were in tribes, they would raid, right? And they would enslave other tribes. It's always like that until we group together into a civilization where we institute the law that we just don't do that, so that we don't ever get into that state. Until that happens, it happens. So until people outlaw it, it continues. And the only way that we've been able to do that so far is through force and fear, where we systematically disarm the mass population who are the slaves, because Charles has invaded our tribe. And you force those people into slavery by, in the past, we did this through outnumbering, but it's overpowering. Now it's not overpowering. Now it's through civilization, because the threat that Charles is using, the gun against our head, is the jungle. As soon as Charles builds a system that's worse than the jungle, we should have a biological alarm going off in our head that says, I can't take this. I can't live like this. This is worse than it would be if I was out in the jungle. I'm gonna fucking kill people. And that's what they do. They reach that limit. The limit is, would you be able to survive like this in the wild? And if the answer is that the wild would be better than where you're at now, then the only logical conclusion you could draw is that you're in a situation that shouldn't exist, and you should kill as many of the people that are in that situation as possible, because you're being enslaved and abused. Because when you get enslaved by another tribe, and let's say there's so many of them, after a while, you can't really beat up all the slaves. And it takes a lot of manpower to just be constantly looking at this slave and making sure he's not running off and that he's doing his job and all that. How do you make all of them do that without being right next to them, whipping them constantly? Well, the way that you do it is that you incentivize them, and you pay the ones that do the best the most, and you pay the ones that do the worst almost nothing, if not nothing, depending on what that quota is. And the more advanced societies would make lots of rules, and there'd be lots of distinctions between high-class slaves that would do intricate carvings, for example, on the walls, versus the stupid slave, the lowbrow one, that all you can do with him is haul bricks. And that's what he does. And those are two completely different people. And how do you get those two different people? You pay one of them more than you do the other one. And it's all about relativity. And they see each other on the street and they go, oh, okay, so I'm being rewarded because I'm better at my job than you. And that seems to make this, all make sense. And so then they accept it and they say, okay, well, I guess that's better than the wild, actually, because in the wild, my artisanry isn't really, for anything. It doesn't really serve any kind of purpose. Nobody appreciates it. So, yeah, I'd like to stay here because I get paid more. But the guy that's at the bottom, if he gets beat up too much, if he gets whipped too many times, eventually he's going to freak out because he's like, you know what, I'd be treated better by nature than I would by this guy. And then he revolts. So that's the game that Charles has been playing since the beginning of civilization, is how do you enslave these people and then have them do things that keep them occupied enough that I don't have to fucking watch every single last one of them. And I don't have to keep whipping them over and over and over. Maybe I only have to whip one of them every great once in a while, just to show them that I can. And then the rest of them follow suit, and they learn psychologically just not to go there. And that is way more efficient than having a single slave master for every slave, whipping him into shape the whole time. So all that has happened since the beginning of civilization is that Charles has gotten better at being a slave master. The problem that arises now is that Charles has gotten so good at being a slave master that he has taught us to forget the jungle. As soon as we forgot that there is a jungle, that we could go out and live in the jungle, then Charles gets to do whatever he wants, because now that bar is set to nothing. So that there is no alarm that goes off because there's no recognition of our past. There's no recognition of where we came from to measure where we are now versus where we were back then. And it all blends together into this constant dismay of a never-ending collapse and where everything always gets worse. But yet we still stay here. But we see it getting worse every single day for decades, and we still stay. That makes no sense. That doesn't happen in nature. But yet we don't leave because we don't remember the jungle. We don't remember that it's actually not that bad. People don't rape each other for no reason most of the time. They don't kill each other for no reason most of the time. Most people don't even steal. As long as they have enough to eat, as long as they don't have to, they won't. And a lot of philosophers have brought this up and said that we should just go back to that state. And I don't agree. I think that it's a good metric that we should use to say that this is the bare minimum. If we're doing worse than the wild, if we're doing worse than the jungle, then we shouldn't be doing it, because nature's already set the bar higher than that. And if we can't even do that well, then whatever we're doing ain't worth doing. And that's what we've lost. So that is what I'm getting at with who Charles is and what his role is and why I use him as an example and as a storytelling device. So I am, and you are, if you're listening to this, and you're not Charles, a slave to Charles. Everyone is now. Now, Charles owns everybody. So he's going to roll this thing out in the future, the New World Order. So this is where it ties into the basic, what they call the truther movement or the 9/11 conspiracy movement or whatever you want to call it, where people have recognized these patterns of division and conquest. And Charles's pattern of dividing and conquering mirrors inauthenticity, and it uses the mechanics of inauthenticity, which is misrepresenting himself, because he's always representing himself as a savior, always. Oh, this is going to help you so much to vote for this guy. He'll really help you guys out. And then he doesn't. Oh, well, this, new building over here is really going to employ a whole bunch of people in a sweatshop. Oh, well, this war is really, really important war because, we've got Saddam Hussein. He's a total dictator guy and he's killing people, because we can get the oil. So none of this shit is the way it really is. It's always being presented like it's something that is inauthenticity, dishonesty, lying. Oh, they have weapons of mass destruction over there, but we just have never found them. And then there's the integrity. Well, we'll get out of there in 5 to 10 years. 30 years later, we finally pull out. Things like that. We promise that we won't be doing any more MK Ultra projects in the future that you'll find out about. So, there's no integrity, there's no authenticity, there's no honesty, there's no character. There's just this raw machine of power that's constantly addicted to consuming more power. And unfortunately, this addict has become so addicted that he's run out of drugs to do. So what the fuck is going to happen when this druggie starts to withdraw? Holy shit. He's going to get so sick and there's not going to be any cure because there's no more drugs left. He's already got all of them. So, that's what happens with addicts is that they get so addicted. Let's say that you got so addicted that you bought your own Coke dealer out, right? You get rich somehow just so you can do more Coke. And then you buy, your own Coke. And then you sell it and you make money off of that so much that you pass right over your own old Connect's head. And then what? And you keep going and you keep going and you hit Scarface status. And let's say you don't get caught and you just keep going and you keep going. And now you've got every single cocaine manufacturing facility in the entire world. Then what do? Well, then you start maximizing it even further to the point where it eventually runs into a limit where it cannot physically go any further, where there's so much of it flowing through the streets that no one even wants it anymore. They're starting to just throw it on each other during weddings because it's as cheap as rice and it's better for the birds. So, it becomes pointless at some point. And that is the pointless point that we're reaching with Charles' system now. And that's the end times. It's the apocalypse, Armageddon, all that stuff. And I think that really will happen. And I think Charles has foreseen this because he's not stupid. He knows when his stash is going to run out. And he knows he's going to go into withdrawals. And he knows he's an addict. And he knows that he's bought out all the Connects and that there are no more Connects to buy because he's already bought all of them. He cannot possibly sustain his level of addiction. So he's just going to kill everybody. And at the end of it, if anybody does survive, they'll be enslaved completely, of course. And they'll be kept in chains forever, just as George Orwell foresaw. And we will be stuck in a permanent state of not only psychosis, but also horror and pointlessness. And the only thing that we will ever be allowed to do again is to serve Charles in any way that Charles wishes us to serve him. So the way that we combat this is if Charles is using inauthenticity, we use authenticity. We accurately represent ourselves. I am Mike Trevathan. This is who I am. Good, bad, and ugly. I have all these fucked up beliefs. I have all this crazy nonsense. I have all these racist tendencies and all these sexist tendencies and sex addictions and all kinds of fucked up things. And I'm a drug addict and a fucking alcoholic and I'm crazy and I got bipolar and I go psychotic and I have every fucking problem that you could ever imagine having. I have it. And yet, I'm still a person. I still have value. I can still be useful. And then we get to honesty. If I at least tell you that, as horrifying as it might be, it's actually kind of reassuring because you don't have to worry about what you might find later on, like you would with somebody who's inauthentic. Because then you got to wonder, because nobody's Leave It to Beaver. You present me Leave It to Beaver, and I have no idea who you are. Whoever you are is unknowable to me, because I can't get past this facade, this public persona, which I think is totally unnecessary, and it's a survival tactic for when you get kidnapped and you get put into somebody else's tribe. That's when you come up with a public persona, because then you can't trust the other person to be private with because they're your slave master. They're going to exploit you. So you don't tell them who you are. You invent a public persona, and you try to blend into the crowd, and you try to conform with whatever everybody else is doing. That's what's happening. And then we are in a state of fucking, like I said, psychotic crisis of being kidnapped and stolen and enslaved into some alien tribe. And the weird thing is that we've all been done that to each other, so that every single tribe is now composed of alien tribes people from other tribes. So now none of us have a real tribe. We're all stuck in these weird makeshift tribes that someone else created that we don't have any control of, and we don't even know what they are. But some of them we know by name: black, white, all these weird ass distinctions that don't make any sense. And honestly, I would even throw in Republican and Democrat, maybe even rich and poor, because some of Charles's people, maybe they aren't part of the 1%, or maybe some of the people in the 1% aren't part of Charles. Maybe there are good rich people out there. There's exceptions to every rule. So that's why I just like calling it Charles, because I don't know who it is. I don't know if it's all the rich people, or all the black people, or all the white people, or all the men, or all the women, or whatever it is that people fucking hate in their stupid little makeshift tribe that doesn't exist. All those makeshift tribes have one thing in common. They're all against something, but they're not for shit. So every time they say they're for, like, let's take Antifa, for example. Antifa thinks it's for freedom, but it isn't. It's in its name, anti-fascist. It's against fascism. It's against something, but it isn't for anything. Because what Antifa would you replace fascism with? Obviously, anything. Well, what the hell is anything? Is that communism? Is it socialism? Is it a form of economic movement at all? Is it political? Is it cultural? Is it psychological? What the hell are you trying to do? Oh, we're trying to completely dismantle the fascist regime. By doing what? Committing random acts of violence. Like them? Well, no, because they get paid by people, corporations. They're, all corporate like, so fuck them. Yeah, well, fuck them. Yeah, fuck them. Okay, yeah, now we're back on board. Yeah, fuck them. Yeah, fuck them. And then they're all in agreement. But the second that you try to talk about anything positive that they might want to do and create, then it's like, well, obviously, it's so obvious that I just don't have to say it because I don't know what to say. So it's just stupid. So these groups that have formed are what I've called makeshift tribes. They're against things. So let's take, for example, a quote-unquote white supremacist, far-right extremist group is against being put into slavery, like I had said. They're against having their community ransacked and just done away with and violated and penetrated and forcibly impregnated with some rape baby that should not be there and can't be gotten rid of because who wants to drown a baby? Kind of a thing. So they are against being forced. They're against forced integration, forced assimilation, forced cultural transformation. They're against that. But they're not yet putting anything together to say that they all agree on what that should be replaced with, because some of them are third option people, some of them are socialists, some of them are capitalist, some of them are anarchist, some of them, all of the above. So the only thing that they have in common is what they are against. And that's why that's not a real movement. And don't put your effort into that, because that's a fucking time suck. You're never going to achieve anything in a makeshift tribe that was invented by Charles to keep you in chains because you're against some other tribe. And that's what makes you get enslaved into theirs, is because they say, well, you invaded us. Well, you did this thing. And so then you complete the other one. The black supremacist movement completes the white supremacist movement. They're both identical twins. And it's like Brutus and Romulus. Or whatever the fuck their names are. The two twin brothers that fought, and one of them defeated the other one and created Rome, according to the myth. It's like that. It's like they're fighting over who gets to create Rome. And it's like, okay, why don't you guys just both agree not to kill each other, and then you can focus all your attention on creating what you think to be the best Rome is. Better yet, what you guys should do is you should start forming real communities that are for things. And yes, that's fine that some of them will disagree. That's okay. That's what's going to make your culture, your community unique. And everybody's going to have their own unique one. Well, we have the internet. We can all talk to each other. So it's a free fucking smorgasbord of any craziness that you want to come up with. There's going to be somebody else out there that agrees with you. And then you just find them and you let them freely assemble. Don't force anyone to join. And, if they do something that's against your policy, then you can obviously get rid of them, but you can't disallow them to leave. The one thing that these communities cannot do is force people to stay in them or even force them to join them. But they can force people to leave. That's every community's right. Every person has the right to force someone else to go the fuck away if they won't go away. Why is that always the case? Because if somebody is in your presence and you don't want them to be in your presence, and one of you is going to be forced to leave. If the person that becomes uncomfortable is the same one that gets forced to leave, it becomes tyrannical, because the person that the distinction is then being made about whether or not someone is in compliance, rather than whether or not someone is free and able to choose independently of said compliance. So it artificially imposes a limit where there really isn't one by nature. So the way that the communities would be able to form is that they would have to be they would all have to be standing for the same specific type of system that they want to create. If they only focus on what they're against, they will never be able to achieve anything. They won't even be able to survive that for very long. It very quickly devolves. So you have to have a vision about what you want to create and forget about the destruction. If you focus on the destruction, you will be destroyed, because you'll be used as the example of why the opposing group is right, and then your own people will kill you for proving the opposition right. So you just don't do that. Now, if we don't do that, and we don't oppose each other when we do that, such that what we do agree on is that we don't attack our opposition, we tolerate them given that they don't attack us, and attacking is not defending. So when I go out and I kill people, that's not saving people, that's killing people. It doesn't matter how you spin it. So you can't do revenge killing. What you do is you build a bigger wall. You build tighter security systems. You have better peripheral or border control. You have better border control. That's it. If somebody in your community dies, increase the border control. And you just keep doing that until people stop dying. And if they keep dying, it's because your border control sucks and you just don't know how to make it better. That's what you guys have to focus on. If you can agree on how to control your borders, then you can agree on how to build a community. If you can't, then you can't. And that's the only way that we can make it through this. We can't all have one giant community, because 99% of us are not going to agree with any other of those that we might find. We're going to have our own, and we're going to want to stay in our own. And there should be a diverse community of all these different types of people, all of whom agree not to attack each other at the very least, and not to force people to stay inside their borders. So proper border control. Basically, that's it. If everybody learns proper border control and implements it, we can all be free. But we have to integrate into our own little communities, and they have to be little. They have to be specific enough that people can agree and say, yes, I agree with that. I like that. I like all the stuff that was said about that. And then it's a tiny little tight-knit community where people have a real connection with each other. That's what we're all missing. That's what's natural, and that's what's going to fix this thing.